let me divide this into two tranches. Prior to the recall, there was a lot of communication between FDA and USDA on the general supply chain issues related to infant formula. It was not about this specific case, but as I've already told you, even the leaders in FDA didn't get the information until February 9th about what was going on. That was an escalation error, as I've said, and we've documented that.
You mentioned how the inspectors are commonly in the field, but we know that HHS stayed shut down for far longer than the private sector. We had a problem a summer ago. How many inspectors were actually not in the field working? How many were Zooming their inspections as opposed, what percent of the workers, whatever, as opposed to actually showing up for work?
As you know, we have very limited authority to do inspections virtually. We actually need to have that as part of inspections, but the inspections were hands-on in the plant.
And so what percent of your inspectors were actually working as opposed to not being at work? Because HHS had a huge problem of people not showing up for work for 2 years.
I think from every piece of data I've seen, we have a very high rate of work. And I might also mention, you know, I was at a pretty highly functioning business called Alphabet, which has done pretty well, where when you have the kind of work
I've limited time, I accept that, but inspecting on site is different than what Alphabet does.
I agree.
And I don't mean to be rude.
What doesn't make sense, what I can't for the life of me figure out, is why it took so long to investigate in the first place. Why did so much time pass before the FDA took serious action to investigate this contamination in baby formula?
There's no question. It's not it's just not a good.
Well, I'm asking the question: why did it take so much time?
That very first case, you have to collect samples.
No, I'm asking why it took 6 months to take serious action.
Because the answer to that question is, as in our document, there are systemic issues at FDA and in our interactions with the industry and our authorities that need to be corrected. It's clearly laid out.
Do you have a
in
plan
the
to do that?
Yes.
And when can we see it?
When can you see the plan?
To correct these problems, yes.
I mean, we have a plan, but a complete plan written out, we'll have to get to you as soon as we can. I can't give you an exact date right now.
Well, what is the clear message from FDA and HHS on how and where he is going to get NeuroSure or an equivalent formula for preemies?
For any infant requiring specialty formula, we have a committee and a whole host of pediatricians and specialists, specialty societies, access to the needed formula.
Well, what I'm asking is exactly what should parents know. I want to be able to say to Mac that you, Secretary Becerra, are telling him directly where he can go to get the formula. He and many other parents.
A parent needing a specialty formula should start with a pediatrician. If the pediatrician is not in the loop, one should go to the HHS website and call HHS, and we will intervene directly to help out. There's a committee in place to do that for each individual infant.
Well, look, when this hearing is over, I expect you and the Secretary to do everything possible to make it very clear to parents like Mac across the country what they should know to be able to get, going to be able to do to keep their babies out of the hospital. Very clear, direct to parents across this country.
I understand.
I think this graph demonstrates better than the graphs in your paper the issue. The summer before this began, there was an 8% increase in the shortage rate on shelves. And it actually was increasing prior to this latest episode, and this is when Abbott was closed. So it seems as if there was something happening here. There's a Politico article from May 9th, and I will quote it. Food division has structural and leadership problems. Aside from the lack of attention of food at the top, unique problems in the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, a deep-seated culture of avoiding hard decisions, and a near-paralyzing fear of picking serious fights with food industry. And then it describes a power struggle between the top two officials, further strengthening the status quo of inaction. Now, to follow up on Senator Collins' comment, Zoom can work if people are actually communicating. But if there is a silence between the two, maybe actually being in the office and rubbing shoulders is somewhat conducive to information being passed. I'm gathering from your answer that these two top leaders were probably Zooming, they were not in the office, and that their chief lieutenants were probably Zooming and they were not in the office. Is all that correct?
They were in the office some, but in general, it's correct that most of the work.
And
was being
some,
done on
as
Zoom.
you and I know, I don't mean to be insulting, but some can be one day a year, one day a month, or one day a week. Do you have a sense of what some is?
I'd say it depends on the individual that you talk about.
And of these two top, who apparently their structural problems and the deep-seated conflict between the two most likely is implicated here, how frequently were they in the office?
I don't have the data on that.
I understand that, but that would be useful to know.